So Thursday marks a landmark day for me and my business in that I'm presenting, albeit virtually, for the first time to an audience outside of the UK. I'm presenting to the Early Years Matters conference in Wyndham, Australia. So, thinking about that, I'm going to do 3 videos this week looking at how we transfer transformative communication to the early years setting. And we're going to start with a question that's posed to me quite regularly. Can a child ever be too young to receive superpower language? No, within reason. If you started to speak to a 6-month-old about superpowers like determination and independence, they're unlikely to understand what that means, of course. That would do no harm, but I wouldn't say you'd get too far with that. I'm going to use my little girl as a case study. So she's now 4, she's in nursery, she's moving into reception in September. From her being 1 year old, I have certainly spoken a lot about independence. So as an example, when she was 1, I would say things like, you're doing that all by yourself, and that means you're independent. At that age, she would not break stride. She would not break concentration. She would not stop what she was doing. She wouldn't even look at me. But it doesn't mean that that wasn't going in on some level. As we know, children are like sponges, whether they appear to be listening or not. So let's look then from 1 year to now at some key stages, key ages, and how her responses have changed and how the impact, how that's worked. So at 1.5, I would say you've just done that all by yourself, which means you're independent, and that's a very special superpower. So I added in the fact that it was a superpower. To be honest, she still didn't really show any interest in what I was saying. When she was 2, I noticed she would shoot me a look. She would be curious. By the time she was 2.5, 3, she would say to me, why do you keep saying that to me, Daddy? And I could say to her, well, because you do a lot of things for yourself, and that means you're independent. That's a brilliant superpower that you've got, and I'm proud of you. So I want to tell you when you showed that superpower. And she would accept that, and off she went. By the time she was 3.5 and now 4, I could start to preempt that quality, so she could come to me perhaps with a challenge that she needed help with. Of course, if I felt she needed help, I would give her help, but I would judge it and perhaps say, I think you could do that by yourself, because remember, you're very independent. Like when, and now I've got a big back catalogue of examples I could give her. I'm only going to give her one in that situation, but I have numerous ones to choose from. What we have now is a fiercely independent little girl. She's independent in nursery, she's independent at home and in other settings. And it's a quality that adults often comment on. Gosh, isn't she independent? I'm going to caveat this. She'd have been independent whether I was using this language or not. That's not the success story here. The success story now is that I know she understands that she's independent. And that means that that belongs to her, and she can transfer that quality into numerous other scenarios, be them things she enjoys or maybe when things are challenging. You might think to yourself, if you're in an early years setting, what if I have a child who's never heard of superpower language before? What do I do then? Similar sort of thing to what I suggested that I did with my little girl. You would start off by saying, you just did that all by yourself. That shows independence. Then after a bit longer, a few weeks, perhaps you would start to say, you just did that all by yourself, and that means you're independent, which is a superpower. Perhaps at that point you would introduce a visual where there's a picture of that child or children showing independence, and maybe like a caped hero or something like that along with the picture, so they understand it's a superpower. And then over a period of time, it's a case of preempt the superpower, notice it when you see it in action, talk about it retrospectively, on repeat as often as you can in as many contexts as you can. And what I hope you'll see then is more and more children not only showing more independence, but understanding it's a quality and a trait that belong to them. That's the biggest gift we can give.